Hello, everybody, and welcome to another adventure in history. I'm your host, Shane McInnes, and there's an adventure hat already. How's it going, Fid? Welcome, everybody. Pleasant Tuesday to everyone, and welcome to this very special viewer request stream. Hey, Graythar, how's it going? This is the first viewer request stream that has been directly requested through the use of online adventure points. Hello to my lovely wife. That's right, Kilted Preacher dropped 10k adventure points to request the KGB, which we will be talking about in just a little bit. Hope everybody's having a good one. Hope everybody's doing all right. Want to give the quick spill for those that are, I think everybody here has heard this before. Kind of feel like I'm honor bound to do it, though. There might be some people lurking in the room that aren't new, that are new. Good gracious, words today. Words. So the show is about making history fun and talking about stuff and interjecting pop cultural references and making bad jokes and all of that stuff. It's going to be a good one. I had a good time prepping for this one. I actually had to go back and do some research. I decided that I wanted to take this back to sort of the roots of Russian spying. So I had to go back and do a little bit of book cracking, which is always nice when I get to dig out the old books and go give a rummage through some things. So that's been fun. I will give an announcement sort of off the top of the show. I do not speak Russian. I have done my best to try to look up all of the Russian words and names that I'll be saying tonight. And I have done my best to try to learn how to pronounce them correctly. Sometimes I feel like I've got a pretty good grasp on things. And other times, I'm not going to even try it. For example, if I were to attempt to pronounce the actual name of the KGB, it looks like this. I don't know how to say that. I know the first word is komitet, and that's about as far as I've made it through that words, or through these words. Yeah. I'm not even going to try it. Don't hate me. I don't know everything, Fit. I don't even know a part of everything. I know a tiny little fraction of stuff. I do not know how to speak Russian. Russian is an interesting language, and I would not have a problem learning how to speak it. But I think this is like jumping into the advanced level when I need to be learning stuff like how to pronounce the alphabet letters. So that's the name of the KGB. You all might have a better go at trying to say that than I do. I'm sure if we had Daria here, she'd be able to just like rattle it off. But I mean, she's from there, so I even tried to look up, and well, I didn't try. I even found videos online where people were properly pronouncing these words, and I tried to mimic them, but it just didn't work. It just did not work. So there will be words that I will say with some confidence. And there are words that I will copy and paste into the little blank below me so that everybody can read them. And we'll just roll with that, right? I did a little bit of work on yesterday morning. And one of the things that I found out how to do was try to like clean up my setup here a little bit. So I have actually completely torn down my OBS setup down to basically just OBS the program, And then I rebuilt the entire thing yesterday morning, which took a lot less time because I was more familiar with the scenario, but still took several hours. But one of the things that I was able to do is do stuff like crop. Like normally, and this might not have been something that anyone else noticed, but normally right below me, this is like right below me is actually just a Word document that I have open that I can type in. But in past episodes, you've been able to see something like the scroll bar on the Word thing and maybe a little bit of the header bar. Well, I got rid of it. And I feel a lot more clean now. So fresh and so clean. Over here on Google Earth. Right here. Normally you could see stuff like the little Google Earth bars and little directional panels and stuff like that. Well, I got rid of them. So, yeah, I know. Like, I get +5 pro streamer points for cleaning some stuff up. It's still not exactly where I would like for it to be. I would like an overlay. I'm working on building one of those or having one of those built for me. So we're moving in the right direction. Slowly but surely. But the images work a lot better now. I don't think that I'll have a problem of them dropping out in the middle of things. My audio should be clearer now. So, made some progress. All right. So that being said, let's talk about the KGB. Oh, I should say, I do have some show and tell stuff at the end of the stream. I have received some artwork in from a couple of artists, and I want to make sure that I show it off. So, hang around. Well, stream just stopped here. Oh, super. Is it stopped for anybody else? Had to pause and play. Super. Sorry about that, Joey. That might just be the internet. It isn't showing me that I've dropped frames or anything. Okay. Joey or Graythar, have you all received mail yet? I'd be interested to know when that mail arrived at your locations. I've never actually mailed anything internationally before, so I have no real concept of thinking. Hey, Steph Anomaly. How's it going? We're talking about the KGB tonight. Twitch can be twitchy. Yeah, the phone app is a very, very different experience. So, international shipping is a certain ring of hell. Is that where the people that are purposefully dilatory go? Like if your job on Earth, or if your purpose on Earth was to slow down everything, maybe you get that. It'll probably take 2 to 3 weeks for a letter. Okay. It took several weeks. Okay. Well, I'm mostly concerned that it gets there in one piece. I want to make sure that you all get that stuff. So I won't ask about it perpetually. Just let me know. And hey, David Peter, how's it going? Okay, so let's talk about the KGB. So the KGB is sort of both bigger than it actually was in sort of common mythology, but it's also a lot worse than a lot of people really understand. So it's sort of both better and worse, or bigger and smaller than it seems. The fascination that the United States and most of Western movies and television shows have with the spy game, you know, all of this stuff with like James Bond and the Avengers, and here I don't mean the Marvel Avengers, I mean like the British UK television show, The Avengers, and even stuff like Get Smart, a funny show here, a comedy show in America that made fun of spy stuff. There's sort of an image of the KGB that gets pushed out, and sometimes they get some of that right. Sometimes it is actually a lot worse than the way that they portray it. But there are even times where they give the KGB a lot more credit than it actually deserves. So the story of tonight the sort of theme that links all of this stuff together. Yeah, I love Get Smart. I request the cone of silence. I love that. And the shoe phone. Oh, so good. Love it. So the story of tonight, or the theme of tonight, is going to be that the Russian international and internal intelligence has basically done the same things since the early 1900s. The name has just changed a lot. So there are going to be people that have these jobs that are basically the same jobs, but because of the way that Russian politics works, there are going to be people that roll over from one bureau to a directorate, and then from a directorate to a mission. And it gets really sort of clumsy, but basically all of Russian intelligence has just a few big ideas that they're all going to handle, and the KGB is no different. It's part of this larger Russian intelligence network. And they sort of have three really big goals. Number one, always promote the brand of communism that is in favor. Now, the brand of communism changes, but it's always promote communism both at home and abroad. Make sure that all of the people inside Russia are towing the line or following the directives of the leader, and make sure that Russia is in the best position that it can be to take advantage of international gain, or knowledge. So basically their espionage, right? So promote communism, keep the people in line, and get as much information as you can. And all of these different agencies, including the KGB, are going to be involved in that sort of idea. So we're not going to start with the KGB. We're actually going to start with a group called the Cheka. The Cheka starts in 1917, which is in the middle of World War I. And the purpose of this group, and Cheka is a sort of a nickname. The actual name for it is All Russian Extraordinary Commission. All Russian Extraordinary Commission. And that's shortened down to Cheka. And I'm not going to try to say the Russian words for it because it's like, and I can't say it. But the Cheka was part of Vladimir Lenin's, and I've learned that Vladimir is not actually the way that you say that name. It's Vladimir. So there we are. Accents on the middle syllable. So I said it wrong again, even though I knew I was supposed to say it differently. But Lenin is, of course, this guy. Bloop. And he is the sort of the prime mover in changing Russia from the first the Tsardom, then to a very brief stint as a democratic republic, and then, of course, to communism. I am arrived. Welcome, KP. I had hoped you would show up. So here's Lenin. Of course, he is a revolutionary at heart, and to him, the Cheka is going to be his way of keeping everybody else in line. And the Cheka has a few of these ideas in this, and the reason I'm starting all the way back in 1917 again is that this is a formative point in Russian intelligence history, and this is where the foundational ideas, those sort of three pillars, are going to be seated. And Lenin has a lot of problems inside Russia. The first one is, of course, that he's trying himself to promote communism. When communism showed up in Russia, it did not immediately take over. There was a civil war in Russia for years while Lenin was trying to get the old government out and then secure his hold over the government as it was. Even in the first elections where communists were getting sort of elected, they didn't even get necessarily a majority of the vote. There were still a lot of other people that didn't like communism. So Lenin needs people that are going to promote communism. And he's going to turn to this group called the Cheka. And these are going to get this new task. You were the walrus. He and McCartney made great music together. Oh, ha ha ha. Not that guy. I am the Eggman, though. He's got 99 problems and Stalin was half of them. Well, Stalin's not necessarily around yet. Hey, Arcadian, how's it going? So, in the Cheka, Lenin's overall goal is to promote communism, but he gives them certain directives. And the first one is this kind of pillar of Russian intelligence, which is to root out people inside of Russia that are not towing the communist line. And the people that he's looking at specifically are people that supported the old Tsar, Tsar Nicholas II and the Romanov family, people that were in the clergy. And clergy here can be either Jewish leadership, there were millions and millions of Russian Jews, but also Eastern Orthodox Christian leadership. Neither of the clergies, or none of the real big religions in Russia, were looked on very kindly by Lenin. Anybody that supported democracy, he wants them out. And most notably, because, again, we're trying to promote communism here, Lenin wants to keep tabs on anybody that is rich, the good old-fashioned bourgeoisie. And the Cheka's job is to find these people and get rid of them. Oh, that's nice. Do you mind if I share the news, KP? I don't want to share the news if I can't share the news. Or I'll let you share it if you want to. Okay, so the Cheka's job is to find all these people, the imperialists, the clergy, the Democrats, the bourgeoisie, and keep either tabs on them or arrest them. I was asking if it was okay if I told everybody the news of yours. I didn't know if you wanted anybody to know that. It's not any of my business anyway. Anyway, so there we are. Yeah, KP's got the COVID. So we are all sending the positive vibes in his direction. Appears to be a mild case, and we're crossing our fingers and hoping it stays that way. Are you in the risk group? I would not think so. He's a pretty fit dude. He's in better shape than I am. So the Cheka has a lot of work because for the first couple of years, especially 1917 and 1918, there are a lot of these people still around. Cryo! Welcome. Extra mayo. Oh, inside jokes. I made a bad pun on Cryo's Discord channel earlier about mayonnaise and club sandwiches. So go follow Cryomera. Feel free to drop all of your fun little emotes. Fun little thing about Twitch now. If you throw emotes on somebody, people can actually click on the emotes and go straight to their channel, which is like a shout out in itself. So feel free to, or I can do the whole thing. Everybody go follow Cryomera. Everybody go follow David too. So this all changes a little bit when Lenin is directly attacked. There's an assassination on Lenin's life, and Lenin gets a little shook, as you might. You know, somebody tries to kill you, it might shake you a bit, right? So there's this very famous quote that Lenin makes, and I'll read it directly to you so that I don't mess it up. It is necessary, secretly and urgently, to prepare the terror. Now, that is super chilling. Like, when you think about what's about to happen, and you don't know what's about to happen, but I'm going to tell you it's bad. When a leader like that says we need to very, very quietly and very, very secretly prepare terror, and he's talking about preparing terror for the Russian people, not for the allies in the war or anything that's going on in World War I. He means like his own people. Prepare the terror. Well, that happens the next year. The Red Terror. Terrorism in the original sense. Yes, absolutely. The Red Terror in 1918. The Cheka is allowed to have almost completely unlimited authority. The only people that can stop the Cheka from doing something are Lenin and his closest group of top advisors. They are the only people that are viewing what the Cheka are doing. All of the police in Russia, all of the government officials in Russia, except for like the little top circle of maybe 10 people at the top of the Communist Party, none of those people know what the Cheka are doing. When someone tries to kill you, you try to kill them right back. Unfortunate, nice quote of Malcolm Reynolds. The Red Terror sees about 200,000 people rounded up and killed. And that's based on an estimate because we really don't know how many people were rounded up and killed. Some of the high-end estimates go up to like 1.3 million, but I don't know if we can conclusively argue those. But what the Cheka is doing is finding anybody that doesn't fit the communist mold, and they're getting whacked. And the Cheka at this point is very much Judge Dredd. They are the judge, jury, and executioner. They are the law. They don't have to present warrants because they don't need warrants. If they find you and suspect you of doing something that's not promoting communism or something that's causing trouble for Lenin, they can kill you on sight. And they don't have to justify that to anybody but Lenin himself. Yeah, we don't need no stinking badges. So by estimate, I mean 2 or 3 times more. Yeah, we do not know how many people the Cheka killed during the Red Terror. Hundreds of thousands, almost certainly. Potentially over 1 million. But we don't know. And because the Cheka was so successful at this, Lenin decides that he's going to give them more authority. So let that sink in a little bit. These guys were so successful in bringing terror on the Russian people and making communism work better by literally removing the opponents to communism, he gave them more authority. And the Cheka had, when you already do what you want, so I'm going to give you more. Yeah, think about that. So what the Cheka gets is another directive. So not only at this point are they dealing with promoting communism and keeping the people inside of Russia towing the communist line, now they get this sort of other directive, and that is make sure that Russia is safe around its borders and outside the country. So the Cheka actually start doing some jobs outside of Russia, including, most notably, dealing with the military deserters, people that were in the Russian army that had deserted the battlefield, or anybody that had gone over to the other side during World War I or during the Russian Civil War. And what the Cheka decides to do to sort of bring these people out of the woodwork is they kidnap all of their family members. And they will post notifications like, let's say Jimmy is a deserter. They will post big bulletin boards full of flyers of pictures and say, we have Jimmy's mom, we have Jimmy's dad, we have Jimmy's wife, and we have Jimmy's 3 kids, and we're going to start killing them unless Jimmy turns himself in. Didn't Hitler come to power in a similar way with a bunch of goons causing terror? Yes, he did. Very similar. So the Cheka is going to start kidnapping hostages. And a lot of these hostages end up getting killed because some of these people that had deserted don't really know what's going on back in Russia, because it was hard to tell what was going on in Russia, and it was especially hard to tell exactly what the Cheka was doing because they didn't have to report what they were doing. People would just disappear, right? And you'd go, where are they? And I don't know. They're in a mass grave somewhere in Hungary, or they're in a mass grave somewhere in the Baltics. We don't know where they are. The Night of Long Knives, yes, Crystal knocked, but yes. Night of the Long Knives was actually a purge of Hitler's own bodyguards by his super secret bodyguards. The SA got killed by the SS, but that's a whole other story. So during this period of time, the Cheka is going to start running afoul of another very important Russian group called the GRU. And we will mention the GRU multiple times through the course of the discussion tonight. With Hitler, it was different, though. He was a speaker, but not the brains of the operation. Lenin was both. Hitler did have a lot more reliance on some of his underlings, but... And I agree that he was more of a group leader than Lenin was. Lenin was very much the guy, but don't sell Hitler short. A lot of those ideas were his own. You're mostly in the right there, Arcadian, but don't underestimate Hitler. He was smarter than he appeared. No. You're doing good. He did have a lot of people around him, though. So who is the GRU? All right, this is another one of those phrases in Russian that I'm not going to try. I'm just going to tell you that the GRU is the special branch of intelligence service within the Russian military. So the Cheka is more or less a political unit inside of Russia that works within what we might consider like the domestic intelligence agencies. So something like the FBI with a lot more evil power. The GRU is specific to the military, so they are a separate branch, and at this period of time, the GRU does not care for the Cheka, and the GRU is pretty much going to be at odds with the more domestic branches of intelligence from this point forward. And part of the problem that the Cheka had, or that the GRU had with the Cheka, was that the Cheka was unlimited in scope. So they could come after GRU people, even though they knew that these people were, sort of Russian through and through. They could go, well, you're not doing it like we want it, and because we outrank you, we can sort of kidnap your people and hold you hostage or kill you if we want to. And when your agencies are fighting with each other, you're not going to get necessarily the best bedfellows, because neither of these groups can go run and tattle to the leader, because the leader is just going to tell both of them, do your freaking jobs, right? You're both supposed to be protecting Russia. You're both supposed to be promoting communism. Do your jobs and act like adults. Well, the Cheka and the GRU aren't going to get along, and the GRU doesn't really get along with basically anybody else for the rest of the discussion, except for a couple of points, and we'll point those out, and they're special when they happen. So the Cheka is eventually going to end up going away. And this is going to be because the Russians are going, or the communists rather, are going to win out. They're going to, by 1922, have control of the country. They're going to have instituted communism as the government, and they're going to have rooted out a lot of the enemies. And at that point, Lenin sort of recognizes that he doesn't necessarily need the super fanatical, crazy people anymore. So he's going to sort of reorganize the government. And a lot of the people are going to keep basically their job descriptions, but they're going to get new titles. And this is something that happens all the time in Russia. When you want to reshape the power structure. You leave basically all of the lower level people in their same jobs, but you shake up the names of the administration and you change the name of the department or you change the name of the directorate. And this allows you to appoint new people. And then you can pick the people that you want and put them in these new jobs, and you can get rid of the people that you don't want and sort of shuffle them off. And the Cheka is going to lose a lot of its power, and it's going to be turned into something that we refer to as the OGPU. And the translation of that is Joint State Political Directorate. So this is Lenin's attempt at reining in the Cheka, because even he understood after the Red Terror that he had sort of unleashed a demon. And to a certain extent, he's trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube here, right? So there are more constraints on the OGPU. They're still going to have the same sort of missions, though. They're still supposed to be promoting communism. They're still supposed to be taking care of the people at home and making sure they're following the communist rules, and they're still supposed to be sort of watching out for Russian interests abroad. Well, they actually fall into it pretty well. They lose the ability to kill people on sight. They did have to actually offer trials, but they got to run the trials. So, I mean, they still had an amazingly large amount of power, way more than either the FBI or the NSA have in our country today, in the United States. But they were still pretty powerful. But one of the things that they're really going to start ramping up at this time is the propaganda. And I was able to locate a few pieces of propaganda that I want to share with you here. This one is a piece of propaganda where we have Lenin at the top, and he is sweeping away all of these people. And this is a representation of a Russian Jewish person, and here we have a capitalist, and of course here we have the French and the British royals, and the little the caption here says, Comrade Lenin sweeping the world of filth. So this sort of activity is actually going to be right up the alley of the OGPU, and they're going to fall into this propaganda role really, really, really easily. It suits their goals quite well. Here's another one here. This is specifically one here against capitalism, where you see this very large man. Of course, he is portrayed here as a spider. There's a spider web behind him with the nasty smokestacks and this giant pile of money here. Of course, he's got his heart is in his stomach, and there's a lot of message going on here. He, of course, loves his money, and he's big and fat and bloated. And, of course, this is the little stuff down here talks about how bad capitalism is and how evil it makes people and how badly it it affects the people of countries. And, this is the sort of stuff that the OGPU, that they really take to this stuff really well. But you can see how that might work on common people. Yeah, and that's the thing. And let us also remember that in the 1920s, the literacy rate of the world was still very, very low. In Russia, the literacy rate was even lower than the global average at that point, because they had only, in the last maybe 50 years, really started to try to industrialize. I don't know the actual literacy number of Russians in the 1920s, but if I guessed 50% could read and write, I would think I would be guessing pretty conservatively on that. I would probably guess lower if I really was trying to get a better number, but I don't know if there's any way to tell. Like, I don't know if there are literacy statistics of Lenin's Russia or not, but I would bet that most people could either read very little or couldn't read at all in Russia at that point. So this sort of visual storytelling propaganda stuff has a lot of power. And remember, the communist especially under Lenin, they're starting to control the airwaves. They're controlling the newspapers and the radio stuff. They weren't completely wrong. A handful of the richest people today own more than the rest of people together. Yeah, you're right. And see, that's the great thing about propaganda. Well, I shouldn't say that there's a great thing about propaganda. One of the most effective things about propaganda is that you find these little pieces of truth, and then you sort of filter your message through these little pieces of truth, and it gives you an air of credibility, right? So you're not necessarily telling the entire truth. You're just showing up enough of the truth to get your point across. And that's what the OGPU is really good at. The Russian propaganda machine during this period of time is on overdrive. If you Google Russian propaganda or 1920s Russian propaganda, there are dozens of these photos that are out there. I just picked a couple that I thought would be easy to explain. But there are lots of it out there. So Joint State Political Directorate, they are not going to be as powerful as the Cheka initially. But here's the thing. Lenin doesn't live forever. And when Lenin dies, a new guy takes over. And I think we all know who that guy is. Good old Uncle Joe. One of the top mass murdering psychopaths that has ever walked the face of the earth. Joseph Stalin. And Stalin has a much different way of running things than Lenin did. And to a certain extent, he thought Lenin was a bit too soft. And that should scare you, because we've just talked about Lenin sanctioning the murder of hundreds of thousands of people. Lenin gets, and I'll make a note here, in a lot of history classes that I've been in, Lenin gets a pass on things because of how bad Stalin was. Let's not forget that Lenin was a monster too, okay? He was more well-spoken, he dressed better, he was just kind of a better guy, but he was a monster. Let's not. Why was this era of Russia so slow? Because they were Stalin. Dun 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 dun. Wah, wah. I was just about to say that if things were bad, here comes something much worse. Right. Hey, Tim Stonks, how's it going, my friend? Welcome back. Lenin enabled the monster that was Stalin. And Lenin was a monster himself. Let's not give Lenin any passes. Just because you're not as bad as the next guy, through example, right. Just because you're not as bad as the last guy doesn't mean you're not a bad dude, too. You can still be number 2 in the bad game and still be really bad. Tuning in while you cook dinner. What was for dinner? I had some leftover pulled pork. It was quite tasty. So Lenin had one idea of how the directorate should work. Stalin has another idea. And Stalin is going to reclassify terrorism. There is a crime inside Russia at this period that is the crime of terrorism, bringing terror against the state of Russia. And the new sort of classification of terrorism is going to benefit the OGPU and the way that they're going to operate. So basically, he says terrorism, according to Stalin, terrorism is any anti-government action. Any anti-government action, including stuff like just talking about it. If we're sitting at a restaurant in downtown St. Petersburg and I go, hey man, that Stalin guy, he's kind of a wonky guy. Well, that's anti-government. I'm now a terrorist. And you could see how much more power this is going to restore to the OGPU. Chicken Alfredo, nothing too fancy. You see we're getting to Stalin. Don't know my about his rise. Well, we're speaking mostly tonight on the Russian intelligence agencies leading towards the KGB. So the sort of mechanisms behind Stalin and his rise to power are a little bit of a different discussion. He's here mostly going to operate through the agencies that we're discussing. So we will eventually get to Stalin's rise to power, or if you would so desire, once you save up enough channel points, adventure points right below you in the chat, you'll see how many you have. You can actually request something if you want to. You can say, hey, I would like a viewer request stream on Stalin's rise to power, and I'd be happy to cover that for you. To let you know, Tim Stonks, this actually is a stream that was requested by one of our mods, Kilted Preacher. So anybody can request that, or we could vote on it at the end of a stream. Right. So in normal viewer request streams, we have a vote at the end, and I take suggestions from everybody in the chat, and then we all vote. So there's a way to get that around if you want. I like to give a lot of flexibility here. I don't want to just talk about what I want to talk about. I'd like to talk about what you all are interested in, too. So with this new concept of terrorism, the OGPU is going to become much more popular. Not popular, powerful. They're never popular. And Stalin is going to give the OGPU the direct task of investigating claims of terrorism. So anytime anybody gets accused of terrorism, the OGPU is going to step in, and their job is to figure out whether or not it was terrorism. And of course, this is going to be used politically. This is going to be used to promote the leadership of the OGPU, the people within the OGPU, Stalin's goals, Stalin's leadership groups. And one of the things that the OGPU is specifically sort of overseeing is the creation of a system called the Gulag system. The Gulags are these really big detention camps that are up in Siberia. And they are chock full of political prisoners and terrorists. Anybody that has been convicted of terrorism might get sent to the Gulag. This has become a bit of a stereotypical sort of joke within, or not maybe necessarily a joke, maybe more of a meme that people reference all the time. But the Gulags are created and overseen by the OGPU. And they're filled up with people that are breaking the rules that Stalin doesn't like. You know, these people that are saying things that are mean about him, or talking about things that are bad about Russia, or not supporting his methods so well, you might end up at the Gulag, where we don't know how many people died in the Gulag. One of the sort of famous little bits of knowledge that a lot of people know is that most of the Gulags did not have fences, because they were so far out in Siberia that if you decided to just run away, you're pretty much dead, because there was nothing for you to do. There was nowhere for you to go, which is, in a certain way, even more horrifying than actually being in a prison, knowing that you could, if you wanted to, strike off into the middle of the Siberian wilderness, but you would die. Man, weather's bad this year. Yeah, Gulag, right? Also, a punishment in Mad Max where you get put on a horse backwards with a big funny head over your face and sit out into the desert to die. There you go. Spin a wheel. That's what happens when you break a deal. Break a deal, face the wheel, right? Thunderdome. Who run by the town? Gotta throw in a little pop culture every now and then, right? Stalin's mustache looks dumb. To the Gulag with you. There we are. So here's the thing about the OGPU. Stalin likes this. Stalin Gulag. I'm sensing a joke theme here. We joke about the reality of Gulag. Yeah, Gulags are bad. They're not good. They are places where people get sent to die, and we do not know how many people died there. Tens of thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people. But if you thought that bad, or thought that was bad, it gets worse. It does get worse, because Stalin enjoys how good this is going. Stalin looks at this new concept of terrorism, and he looks at the OGPU, and he goes, oh, this is good. And automatically that should set off bells. If this is making Stalin happy, this should not be considered a good thing, right? So what he's actually going to do is give the leadership of the OGPU more power. Starting to sound familiar? And he's going to create something that becomes known as the NKVD, Yeah, I know another acronym. It's okay to joke, to make things like, no, don't ever apologize for making a bad joke. I brought up Mad Max. We can talk about gulags. And as long as we understand the reality of the situation, I think that it's okay to be a little bit to bring a little levity. Don't ever apologize for being goofy. I'm goofy enough for everybody. So, NKVD, People's Commissariat for Internal Affairs. So here's what he does. Stalin goes, I really like the way that the OGPU is operating, and I really think that they should have more power. Welcome to the club. I don't like mayonnaise on my bread when they come from restaurants because it always ends up making my bread too mushy. So no mayo on my club, please. I do like the frilly toothpicks, though. I'm down with the frilly toothpicks. 2 thumbs up for frilly toothpicks on clubs. Okay. So the OGPU gets more power. And how does he give them more power? Well, here's what Stalin does. Stalin takes the run-of-the-mill police, right? Just the regular old Russian police force. And he merges it with the OGPU to create a new group called the NKVD. So basically now, every police officer inside of Russia has the same level of power. So the NKVD is like creating tens of thousands of more people that are going to spy on you. And if you haven't noticed, that's terrifying. Yes, that is terrifying, exactly. That's so crazy. But Stalin was prepping for something because he has a big goal in mind. And his goal is, I'm sick of people in Russia not supporting me. And this leads us to a period of time from 1936 to 1938. And it is called the Great Purge. The Great Purge. In the Great Purge, Stalin uses the NKVD and their intelligence gathering capabilities and their presence to kill over 1 million people. And he's got a right-hand man who's running the NKVD. And his name is... Did I spell that right? Yezhov. Yeah. His name is Nikolai Yezhov. And I have a picture of him. So here's Stalin again. And here's Stalin with Yezhov, who is the head of the NKVD. And I picked this photo in particular for a reason. Because this photo was publicized at a particular time. Yeah, he even looks like a villain. Yeah. Stalin actually at one point had this photo re-released after Yezhov gets killed. And they had basically airbrushed him out of the photo. So if you Google Stalin Yezhov photo, Stephen Miller's ancestor, ooh, that's an accurate and sick burn. I don't actually know if it's his ancestor or not, but they look a lot alike. How do you get so many people that are willing to brutalize and kill their own countrymen? That's a great question. The ideas that are being sort of adopted by most of these people are that if you don't agree with me, you are the bad guy. And that is a slippery slope. That starts off being, I don't agree with you. Then it comes to, I don't associate with you. Then it comes to, I honestly wish you ill. Then it comes to, I'll do whatever the government tells me to do as long as it's telling me to kill you. And it's not such an uncommon occurrence. And we should really pay attention to this stuff because human beings have been human beings for the past 220,000 years. Human beings don't change. The situations around us do change. And just because people are different than you and have different opinions than you and don't agree with the same political ideas as you does not mean that we should kill those people. Right? Path to the dark side. Right? Hey, Vern, how's it going? Welcome. But there are good reasons to decide to stop associating with people with deplorable ideas. Absolutely. I'm not trying to say that we should hug everybody. But if you want to kill somebody because you have a difference of opinion, that is not a light decision to make. Trying to amass power always leads down the same road. Fear leads to hate. Anger leads to pain. What is it? Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Yoda said that. And even if it wasn't a prequel, it's still a pretty good quote. So what is Yezhov going to do? Well, this guy, again, is in charge of the NKVD, and he is Stalin's right-hand man. And Stalin says, you go get rid of anybody that doesn't like me and anybody that doesn't like my ideas and kill all of them. And Yezhov does. Half of the Soviet leadership, including half of the military leadership, half of the members of the Russian Communist Party, are dead. Millions and millions of people are killed during the Great Purge. And it's because Stalin decided, I like the way that this operates, I'm going to give them more power. Now, basically everybody that's walking the street is a police officer, is an intelligence officer, and they're spying on you. Stalin had people in everybody's house. And this is going to be when you start seeing the rise of something called a troika. If you've ever studied Russian history, there's a Russian show trial. It's a tribunal where you get basically arrested and you get run up on trial. And some of these trials literally lasted 2 or 3 minutes. And they were basically done so that they could say, oh, well, we gave him a trial before they killed him. But these troikas would run through hundreds of people a day. And you would get your trial and you'd get to speak at your trial. It was a show trial. No hugging in the age of COVID. If the only tool you have is a knife, everything looks like a murder victim. Ooh, wow. That's horrible. But not necessarily wrong. Morals aside, that's actually insane that he managed to do that. Alexa, are you Stalin? Yeah. Let me just kind of back up here a little bit. It is perfectly okay to call people out for horrible ideas, right? If somebody is doing something that is absolutely wrong and stupid and idiotic, that causes pain and suffering to other people, you can call that junk out. But where the Russians went wrong in this scenario was that a lot of them looked at Stalin as a role model, and he was saying anybody that doesn't 100% support my agenda should be killed. That's a different scenario, and that's a horrible thing that we should never allow to happen. And it's not like it can't happen again. That's what I was trying to get to. So I don't want to. I'm not trying to say go hug a Nazi. Don't. There are always people willing to support people like him if they benefit from it. Yes, and that's another thing. A lot of these people saw Stalin as their road to power. I feel like I see you on a trip to this place. Yeah, I've never actually been to the KGB museum. It'd be fun to go to, though. I've been to the Spy Museum that's in Washington, D.C. Is this the same one? Where is this one located? Oh, this is in New York. Well, you're giving me more reasons to come to New York, Vern. Unless you want to give said Nazi COVID. Always use good punching for when you get close enough to hug a Nazi. Does Troika have a different meaning? In Norway, we have a bloody chocolate bar called a Troika. No. Troika in Russian is really just like 3. It's related to 3 because it's a tribunal. It's a court with 3 judges. So if the chocolate bar is divided into 3 parts, I bet that's why it's called a troika. Or if I could guess that the chocolate bar would be divided into 3 parts, that's why it's called a troika. So in Russian, they use this word troika to mean, there we go, the chocolate bar is made of 3 layers. We have discovered the meaning of the word there. So troika is just kind of like 3, and it's a 3-paneled judge seat, and there's a guy in the middle that's the lead judge, and there are 2 supporting judges, and they sort of just run you through to make you guilty so that they can say, oh, you had your day in trial and you got blah, 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 and then, blah, blah, blah. So the NKVD got rid of Yeshov. NKVD under Yeshov is going to use these troikas all the time. They're going to kill millions of people. They're going to have millions more put in jail. Anybody that Stalin doesn't like, anybody that they don't like, anybody that just needs to get taken care of according to their new way. Still maybe not the best name. Probably not. It's called troika because it's gone in seconds. I like chocolate. It would probably be gone in seconds. Oh, yeah. I just got the double entendre there. Anyway, so the NKVD gets so powerful under this Great Purge that Stalin decides these guys are really getting it done. And so Yezhov negotiates to actually have the NKVD take over the Foreign Intelligence Department. And this is really going to be sort of the groundwork of what is really going to turn us into the KGB here in just a bit. Because after the Checha's external operations and some outside of Russia operations of the OGPU, the NKVD had been mostly focused inside, but he's going to absorb the Foreign Information Department totally. It's like all of Russia's foreign spies and all of Russia's police officers and all of Russia's internal spies are going to be working for Yezhov. That's one dude with an incredibly large amount of power. This dude knows everything, right? If somebody sneezes, this guy probably finds out about it. And because of that, guess who gets paranoid about Yezhov? If you guessed Stalin, you're right. Because one of Stalin's sort of knee-jerk reactions was paranoia. And after Yezhov had control over this giant apparatus, Stalin goes, get rid of that guy. So Yezhov gets arrested, and as the ultimate form of irony, he gets run through a troika, and he gets killed for being a traitor against Stalin. Now, was he a traitor against Stalin? You tell me. But was Stalin freaked out about the whole thing? Yeah. Because when you give somebody that much power, things get a little bit sticky. And it gets worse for Stalin because that was in 1940. And as you might know, stuff's going on in 1940. There's a lot of stuff going on in 1940. Most notably, World War II is going on. And Stalin has now even more stuff to worry about because in 41, the Germans invade Russia. This is Operation Barbarossa. And Stalin gets really, really freaked out that he himself doesn't really understand what's going on outside, right? Because Stalin and Hitler were supposed to have a deal where they weren't going to fight each other. And then Hitler suddenly invades Russia, and Stalin is like, where was my intelligence? Where was the notification that this was about to happen? They're invading with over 2 million people. It's the biggest land invasion that has ever happened in the history of mankind. How did this go unnoticed? How are we losing people by the thousands every day? And Stalin goes, we have been focused internally way too much. We need to reorganize and reorient our eyeballs to the outside. And so the NKVD gets squished. And Stalin's going to make something new. And this is going to be the NKGB, which is not the KGB. This is the People's Commissariat for State Security. And this is pretty much what's going to run for the rest of the war. Stalin is really, really not pleased with the fact that so much is going on outside in the world and he doesn't know anything about it. He doesn't know about this rocket technology that people are working on. He doesn't know about jet propulsion technology that the Germans are working on into the KGB. He doesn't like the fact that stuff is happening and he doesn't know about it. So what is he going to do? Well, the NKGB's job is to take the same apparatus that they were using to spy on Russian people and then spy on everybody else. And I mean everybody else. And this is going to be the real big kickoff of the Russian spy game. And they're going to get people into espionage all over the country. They're going to get into the nuclear programs of the British and the United States. They're going to get into the jet propulsion stuff in Russia and the rocket propulsion stuff that's going on in in Germany. And Stalin, as soon as he figures out how little he really understood the whole scheme of things, it makes him really upset, because he finds out that both the United States and the British have already gone through like early stage testing on nuclear weapons materials, and he doesn't even know that nuclear weapons was a thought. And he is real pissed. Like, how did we miss all of this stuff? And when the war finally ends, Stalin realizes that he's behind the 8 ball. And he really figures this out after 2 events. Number 1, he has a very fateful meeting with Harry Truman at the end of World War II. And by that point, Russia had sort of turned around and was conquering a lot of Eastern Russia. And Stalin was sort of reneging on a lot of deals behind the 8 ball. I like that one, by the way. And Stalin was supposed to turn all these countries back over to be independent and free, and then he decided that he wasn't going to. So Truman sort of sidles up to him and he goes, look, man, you better act right, because the United States has a weapon of really big, devastating proportion, and you should just remember that. And Stalin is already freaked out because he sort of knows that they're working on a bomb anyway, so this is kind of like, holy crap, did he just threaten me with a nuclear weapon? And then, of course, the United States drops 2 of these bombs on Japan, and Stalin is like, nope, this is bad news for Russia. And so he goes to the NKGB and he's like, tell me the nuclear secrets. Tell me the jet propulsion and rocket propulsion secrets. And they're like, we've got a little bit, but we don't have a lot. And he's like, what are we even using you for? Like, you have failed miserably. So this is actually one of the shorter-lived versions of the Foreign Intelligence Agency here of Russia, because he gets so hacked off with them that in 46, these guys are gone. So they don't even make it 3 full years, and the NKGB is out. And so, to the gulag. Some of them do end up in gulags. Some of the spies get recalled. Some of them actually flip, which is how we know some of this stuff happened. Because when Stalin got really angry and started reorganizing the entire Russian world into the Soviet Union, some people got demoted. And some people that used to be heads of these big directorates ended up like you are now head of Czechoslovakian intelligence. And these people were like, I was in the Russian leadership and you're sending me to Czechoslovakia? And Stalin's like, be happy you're going to Czechoslovakia and not Siberia, you twerp. And some people are like, well, forget this junk, I'm going to the Allies. He also managed to have a lot of people who escaped Russia during the war sent back. Basically, everybody wants to stay on somewhat good terms, so they go with it. It's also quite messed up. Yes, that's another thing. When he reforms them, he makes a new thing, and this is the entire Russian world is also getting reorganized at this point because he's turning Russia from the Russian communist country to the Soviet Union, the United Soviet Socialist Republics. So everything gets replaced with a ministry. And the new one is the MGB, which is the Ministry of State Security. The check bounced. Oh, yeah. Oh. That was a good one, Vern. I appreciate that one. So, when all of this is happening, he's catching people left and right, and he is dragging people back home, and he's using the spies that were loyal to him, that were giving him good information to drag other people back in, and some people are going to covert stuff, and some people are like changing their names and going into witness protection kind of stuff. But all of this is really, really new because this is going to hit like the height of the spy age. And the Ministry of State Security, the MGB, is going to be really powerful for quite some time. And Stalin's real focus here is going to be all of these new countries. So I've got the map here, and I haven't pointed at the map at all, but it's now actually a pretty good time to look at the map. So Russia had conquered basically this entire chunk of Eastern Europe. The Balkan republics, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, Belarus, Ukraine, Poland, Romania, Moldova, Czechoslovakia, parts of Yugoslavia, and he controlled all of this territory, and it was what was known as the Eastern Bloc. These countries were forced to join the Warsaw Pact, which was an economic deal and defense deal between all these countries, and they were also part of the United Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR. And the MGB's job is going to be basically know everything. Know everything that's going on in the Eastern Bloc. Know everything that's going on in the Allied countries. Stalin doesn't want anybody on Earth to sneeze without him knowing about it. And this is going to be the real sort of ball rolling on the good old-fashioned spy thriller kind of James Bond stuff. This is when the Russians are going to get really, really good at recruiting people. Some of the most famous turncoats in history are this group of people called the Cambridge Five in England, who were all Cambridge-educated, high-level elites inside of England who were involved in a lot of top-secret British sort of intelligence stuff. They all flipped. They were feeding Stalin and the MGB information from the United States, from other Allied countries, from Western countries in Europe that weren't under the Eastern Bloc. And when the little bits of nuggets start coming in, the people inside of the MGB go to Stalin and they go, we're getting a little bit, but if you sort of take the gloves off of us, we could get more. And this is sort of playing into Stalin's paranoia, because the way that they phrase this stuff is basically, we know that something is happening, but we don't know exactly what it is. For us to know exactly what it is, you sort of need to give us a little bit more leverage. You need to be able to give us a little bit more leash, a little bit more freedom to operate. And Stalin's like, do it. You once again have permission to arrest and jail people on suspicion. You could be arrested and thrown in jail for an indefinite period of time for suspicion. And the MGB is going to use this a lot. And they use this a lot in foreign countries. In some of the eastern countries of Europe, the MGB actually has either just as much power to jail people or more power than even those local countries' police officers. So like if you went to Czechoslovakia or Poland, the MGB had more people in jail than the Polish police officers did sometimes. These guys were really, really, really strong. But then something happens. It turns out that even Stalin can't live forever. And then Stalin dies. And the MGB is going to go through a bit of a chaotic phase. Because when Stalin dies, there is a massive power struggle inside of the Russian leadership. And because he was so sort of monolithic in his power, people basically start grabbing whatever little bit of power that they can and sort of hoarding it to themselves. And the guy that was the leader of the MGB is going to recognize that he can basically gain more by breaking the MGB down into parts and then sort of parceling it out to people in his retinue to gain favor for himself. So this is also done, by the way, because the guy that was the leader of the MGB at the time realized that he had a giant target on his back. So he thought that if he could break it all up and distribute it out to these people that were trying to kill him, that he'd be able to get away with it. Well, he doesn't get away with it. He ends up dead. But there is a lot of What year? Stalin died in 53? Yes, Stalin died in 53. I don't even know why I had to think about that. I don't know why I had to pause by that. Yeah, it's 53, 1953. So there's a string of assassinations, and the MGB leadership and the parts of what used to be the MGB are all like backstabbing each other, literally killing each other, fighting each other. And the guy that sort of comes out on top of Russia, there's Yezhov again, is this guy. This is Nikita Khrushchev. Here, by the way, he's pictured with Fidel Castro. This is after they had decided to put Russian missiles inside Cuba, which of course becomes known as the Cuban Missile Crisis, which is something that Khrushchev orchestrated. And the reason I picked that particular one is because he orchestrated that through his version of the Foreign Intelligence Agency. Because the MGB is no more. And what do we got? That's right, we have the good old KGB. Which again is this thing. And I won't try to say it, but that's what it is. This is quite a dude. He used to get drunk and go on state visits unannounced. Yeah. Khrushchev's an interesting guy. He is very much not Lenin. He is very, very different. Very few countries had the guts to say no when he came calling. He was one of the most powerful leaders on earth, and had a very fiery temper. So Khrushchev is, I should type his name here. There's always so many H's. Was the KGB one of the subdivisions from the dividing of the MGB? So what happens is that Khrushchev is going to take over in the midst of all of this kind of chaos. And he's going to realize the importance of having this domestic and this foreign intelligence agency sort of under one roof. And interestingly enough, he's going to reach out to some of his contacts in the good old GRU, which had sort of a long-running antagonistic relationship with the domestic and foreign intelligence offices. But Khrushchev had a lot of contacts within the GRU because he had come up through the military, and he uses them to sort of help him build the KGB. And the KGB is going to be the longest lasting version of Russian intelligence. It runs from 1953 all the way to 1991 when it finally shuts down. So decades longer than any of its predecessors. And part of it is because the way that Khrushchev organized it was so that it had kind of a balance. It was broken down into different sections that were all called directorates or divisions. And they each sort of had their own little operating capacity within themselves. There's the first one and the fifth one, and there's, third and fourth, but they're all sort of under the KGB umbrella. But because they had a little bit more targeted zones, people never really could get too big for their britches. You were given a sort of a little box, and your box might be propaganda. So there is a propaganda division of the KGB, and you got your little propaganda box, and you only lived inside the propaganda box, and you only had power inside of that. And then there was another box, and it was like, this is the foreign intelligence box. And now some of the boxes were bigger than others, but you still had sort of boundaries around you. So it wasn't something like where one person could become this sort of larger-than-life possessor of all knowledge. Khrushchev was smarter than that. So he's going to start focusing a lot on problems that are going on in Eastern Europe, especially Hungary and Czechoslovakia. So Hungary is here, and the country that was Czechoslovakia is now two countries, the Czech Republic and Slovakia. But this region right here had always had a lot of ties with Western Europe and not so many ties over here with Eastern Europe. And they're getting a little bit independent. And Khrushchev is going to look at these countries and go, no, firm, hard pass, no, you can't. There is an uprising in Hungary that he stomps out violently, sends a guy named Yuri on drop-off to go deal with them, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. There are problems with the Czechoslovakian government wanting to elect new leaders, and that gets pushed really, really hard down. And so this focus on keeping communism at the forefront of Eastern countries becomes one of the bigger pillars of the KGB under Khrushchev. But he's also going to start looking a lot further abroad. And when I say further abroad, I do mean further abroad, over here to emerging countries in the Americas, especially countries in Central America here and in the Caribbean here, most notably Cuba, but also countries like Nicaragua, Panama, and then countries down here in South America, Colombia, Venezuela. And the KGB is given a task to find extremist left-wing groups inside of these countries in Latin America and promote them to try to help them take over the countries. And one of the biggest, one of the biggest successes of this are the Sandinistas. If you know anything about the Sandinistas, these are in Nicaragua. They had a lot of national publicity dealing with a whole bunch of news stories going through history. So Sandinistas are one of the orchestrated groups that the KGB sort of creates. But at home, Khrushchev is going to be a little bit softer than Stalin. And he does this on purpose. He doesn't want to be seen as Stalin. He wants to be viewed as more lenient. So he's actually going to lighten up the at-home side of the KGB. He's going to allow more publications. He's going to allow state-run newspapers to interview KGB leaders, which was a huge deal. To even admit that the KGB existed was a big deal. And that's much less than even, letting these people sit down with an interview. They had ice cream socials now. I don't know if they had ice cream socials, but it's a lot less dictatorial and crazy than it was under Stalin. And this actually leads to a little bit of problems between the KGB and Khrushchev, because a lot of the people that had moved over into the KGB had been part of the MGB and had wanted that power that Stalin had given them, and now Khrushchev is going, no, we need to back off of that a little bit. Siberian ice. Oh, goodness gracious. I'll take it. But Khrushchev is going against his own leadership. Like, he's putting these people in charge of the KGB, and they're going, we shouldn't do this. It's going to cause trouble. And he's like, no, it'll be fine. Just do it my way. And they're like, we don't like this. It's going to be bad. And he's like, just do it. So he does. And this is why they all decided to kill Khrushchev. The second leader of the KGB and the leader that Khrushchev had in charge of the KGB and the GRU leadership and a lot of other intelligence agency leaders are going to cook up a plan to push Khrushchev out of power. And if they could get rid of him, that would be even better. The guy that is the contemporary head of the KGB actually is the one that sort of talks them out of straight up killing him and just letting him sort of retire quietly into the sunset. And he's actually the guy that goes to tell Khrushchev, like, you have been replaced and you're no longer in charge of Russia. But what's really ironic about this whole thing is that he was actually trying to do what we might consider the right thing by not spying so much on his own people. But they had become so drunk and mad on power that by not spying on people, he was pissing them off. So they decided, we need to get rid of him and we need to get some more Stalin-y kind of guy back in here. We need to go back to the good old days of Stalin. And that should blow your mind. That should really just make people go like, what the actual junk? The good old days of Stalin. But that's what they end up with. They end up with a guy named Leonid Brezhnev. I can't speak and talk at the same time. So let's look at him. So again, this is Khrushchev. Here we go. Leonid Brezhnev. He doesn't like the way that Khrushchev was running things. Well, I guess if that's your occupation, it kept you busy. Yeah. But busy doing what? That's the question. So, under Brezhnev, you end up with, he looks like Stalin without the mustache. Well, I mean, he's very much a more Stalin-y kind of guy. Because as soon as he takes over, he starts undoing everything that Khrushchev had done. Like, we're going to get rid of all this liberalist stuff. We're going to go back to arresting all of these people. He gives the KGB back the power to spy on people inside of Russia. He's going to crank up the power of the KGB, and he's going to give power to one of the most, well, I guess the only way that I can say this is to be accurate, one of the most bloodthirsty Russians left alive, a guy named Yuri Andropov. And I'll show you his picture. So this, again, is Brezhnev. This is Andropov. Yuri Andropov. This guy had participated in the war, World War II. This guy had been sent to foreign countries to quash rebellions and had done so very, very bloodily and violently. And he gets put in charge of the KGB. And Brezhnev and Andropov. His name is, this is Leonid, and this is Yuri. Yuri Andropov. When Andropov takes over the KGB, he doesn't have any, like, he has literally no morals. And he will decide what he wants to do and then make it happen. And one of the things that he wants to do is to crush Czechoslovakia. The leadership of Czechoslovakia had elected people, the people of Czechoslovakia had elected leadership that were very, very liberal, sort of taking a cue from the Khrushchev doctrine of let's be a little bit more open. And Andropov hates that. And so he decides, we're going to go kill all these people. Lenny Bruce and Lester Bangs. Yep. They all start with LB. initials there. Anyway, it's not quite the end of the world as we know it, unless you're in Czechoslovakia. So Andropov comes up with this idea that he's going to say that the CIA was in secret league with this new leadership of Czechoslovakia. And they weren't, and he had no evidence to say that they were, so he made it. He crafted it, and so Brezhnev basically said, go deal with it. And so he goes in Czechoslovakia, kills a bunch of people, throws a whole bunch more people in jail, and basically overthrows the Czechoslovakian government. Because he felt like it. Not because he had any evidence, just because he could. This dude's brutal. And he's going to actually come up with some of the truly, like, really warped and twisted KGB, like, brain stuff. He has, yeah, on a Tuesday, yeah. He has this fascination with psychiatry. And he is going to come up with these, like, psychiatric retraining prisons where you get arrested and you get charged with a crime, but then you get diagnosed with a mental illness, and then they literally screw around with your brain to basically reprogram you. This is like for real mind control, brainwashing garbage going on. And Andropov is all over it. He loves this stuff. The number of psychologists and psychiatrists that get involved with this stuff is crazy. This is really the psyops kind of stuff where you want to control people's minds. This is, yeah, it's like KGB's MK Ultra stuff. They are really screwing around with people's brains. And they have a captive population that they can do whatever they want to with, because Brezhnev is like, I don't care if you arrest people. Are they bad people? And Andropov is like, of course they're bad people. He doesn't have to say if they're bad people or good people. Reality is weirder than fiction sometimes. It surely is, Tim. That's a great point. And this is a weird era, because Brezhnev is all about making Russia strong again and standing back up to the West, and Andropov is a monster with basically unlimited political ability to arrest people and then screw around with their brains and throw them in jail perpetually, put them on all sorts of medication, do all sorts of weird treatment to them to just get them to straighten up and fix their problems, you know? It's weird. But Brezhnev actually ends up in a bit of a fix because he spent too much money. Did they do this learning from men staring at goats in the USA or the other way around? No, I think the men staring at goats in the United States was developed independently. But I think the thing that links them together, Joey, is that these agencies of intelligence sometimes go to crazy lengths to get stuff done. If you have nothing to hide, then you have nothing to fear. That is unfortunately very much the way that they approach this whole scenario. So Brezhnev ends up spinning Russia into a hole. And he has to cut back on a lot of stuff. And he actually has to sort of sue for peace with the United States. There's a period of time what we call détente, where we're sort of both backing away. And Brezhnev needs a win. And so Andropov goes to him with this idea that he's got foreign intelligence from Afghanistan. And Russia could invade Afghanistan. They could have the entire country captured within weeks. And this would be sort of the revitalization effort that Brezhnev needed to hold on to power and make Russia look strong again. So Andropov fakes a whole bunch of information and makes a whole bunch of really bad guesses and goes to Brezhnev and say, look, we should just invade Afghanistan. It'll be done in weeks, right? We'll be done by the end of the year. And so Russia, who at that time controlled all of these Central Asian countries right here, which are today the stands, in 1979, they invade Afghanistan. And if you know anything about how well that went, it did not go well. And this is actually going to sort of be the beginning of the end for Brezhnev. He was in bad health. He had several strokes. After he had one really, really bad stroke, and for almost a year, he made no public appearances. He ended up actually dying from a heart attack. But for the first time, what's going to happen when Brezhnev dies is that because the KGB had become so powerful, Andropov was actually more or less in the driver's seat of Russia. And Andropov transitions from leader of the KGB to leader of the USSR. And as soon as that happens, you can just expect how crazy things go. When Andropov became leader, what he's going to end up doing was sort of using the KGB as his personal weapon because he understood how it worked and because he had firsthand knowledge of exactly how to game the system to do whatever he needed it to. He was going to get rid of everybody that had questioned his power. Everybody that was in Brezhnev's cabinet that had ever stood up to him was gone. Everybody that had ever told him no was gone. And he's using the KGB to get this done. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you're in Russia or in an Eastern Bloc country or if you're across the world in Latin America. If you ever did anything that Andropov didn't like, the KGB is coming after you. And they are going to get you because they're bad. But the problem is that he recognizes almost immediately that Russia was in a gigantic financial problem. And he's going to have to lighten up on the KGB at home a little bit. They've all been sacked. The reason he has to lighten up with them at home is because he has to start this new economic plan. Proceed with the llamas. My favorite is the Mexican whooping llama. That's my favorite one from that little skit. So this economic plan starts to produce a little bit, but the problem with Andropov is that he was already old. And he's going to die basically within about, I think he's not actually in power for 2 whole years. But in that span of time, I think it's 18 months. In that 18-month span, he's going to do a lot of damage to people that were Brezhnev's supporters. He's going to recognize that Afghanistan is a lost cause. He's also going to recognize that Poland is becoming a big problem. And when he dies, he's kind of like, all right, fine, I'm done. And he basically rolls out the last couple of months of his life, sort of letting things go. And when Andropov dies, that's sort of the end of the old guard. These are the sort of the last of the big Russians that was back alive during World War II, that had participated with Lenin, that had done stuff with Stalin at the beginning, that had survived the purges. And there's only going to be one more guy that's even kind of in that world, and he's only going to be premier for just a little bit. And his name is Chernenka, but we're not going to worry about him too much. The only thing that you need... I guess we'll talk about him a little bit, fine. I'm trying to make up a little bit of time because I've realized now that I've been a bit long-winded. So this is Chernenka, who becomes Russian leader after Andropov. He was already elderly when he took over. He's going to rule for less than a year. He's going to sort of revitalize the propaganda arm of the KGB because things were turning pretty negative inside of Russia. He is going to be pretty heavy with the assassination abroad, but overall, he's not going to be a very effective leader, and he's not going to use the KGB nearly as well as any of the previous leaders had. But this is going to give way to this guy, who many of us might recognize from a Pizza Hut commercial. Because he becomes the head of it is Gorbachev. So kill Gorbachev. Gorbachev. So remember that a lot of OG comedians make fun of the birthmark? Yeah. I am too old. Age is a number. Old is only how you feel. The crazy thing about Gorbachev taking over is that the KGB had spied on him for about the previous 20 years. He had been the target of a lot of different intelligence movements. Like his housekeepers were KGB spies. You're told and you recognize them, you have COVID, you feel old. Okay, fine. I've got to sneeze. Whew, that was a big one. Sorry about that. Soon, thank you. So, Gorbachev is not popular with the KGB. And one of the reasons he's not popular with the KGB is because they literally knew everything about him. Because they had been spying on him. Yet somehow now he's in charge. And he really got picked because of his economics background. He was kind of one of the new generation of Russian leaders. He had come up through university. He had a lot of background with money and economics and had gone to school for that stuff. And he got picked mostly because people were trying to figure out a way to prop up the Russian economy. Brezhnev had spent way too much money, and Russia could not pull themselves back from the brink without a wise economic hand on the tiller. And Gorbachev was supposed to be the guy that was going to do it. I turned it back on. I totally would have fallen for that, though, by the way. If you had done that, I would have totally fallen for it. Because I'm particularly known for leaving my mic off. So Gorbachev is actually going to have a bit of a problem inside the KGB, and that is this guy, Vladimir Krychkov, who was the head of the KGB at the time. And what's weird about this is that Krychkov was chosen by Gorbachev, and he was put in power by Gorbachev, but he didn't like Gorbachev. He didn't like him at all. He thought the guy was a joke. And Krychkov is going to be the central part in creating a coup to try to get rid of Gorbachev, because he was too light and too weak. And at this point in the United States, we're under the presidency of Ronald Reagan. And Reagan had decided that the way that he was going to defeat Russia was just by spending billions of dollars that the United States didn't have in an effort to make Russia try to compete. And then when Russia could not compete, they would collapse, which is basically Reagan's entire foreign policy: spend money and make Russia fall apart. Yeah, very famous speech there, delivered in Berlin. So Gorbachev had not been able to respond very well, and Krychkov is going to sort of buy the KGB out from under Gorbachev. What happens is that Krychkov is going to start calling agents back in, and he's going to look around the world at places where he knows that people that are loyal to sort of his side are located, and he's going to pull them back to Russia, because he needs sort of all hands on deck here. And he's going to literally embezzle money from the Russian government to sort of pay off these KGB agents to line up with him against Gorbachev. It kind of worked. No, it totally worked. It absolutely did work. He spent a whole bunch of money that the United States didn't have. But it absolutely worked because the Russians tried to compete and they couldn't. So Gorbachev, even as leader of the USSR, is constantly being spied on by his own agencies. In fact, again, by Khrushchev, a guy that he chose to run the KGB. And this is going to be the end of Gorbachev. Khrushchev is going to spring the plan. They basically just tell Gorbachev that he is no longer in power, that he had been voted out of power, and they start threatening that they're going to release all of this evidence against him if he doesn't go quietly. And at this point, Gorbachev basically decides that it's not worth it. That he would rather live his life working to sort of make Russia the country that he desired it to be than he would, end up dead in a, unmarked grave somewhere in the Siberian wilderness. So the coup ends up failing overall, but Gorbachev basically says, I quit anyway. Like, I can't deal with this garbage. They wanted to, get rid of him, but that didn't work. So he's just like, forget it. I quit. I quit. It's too much. I can't handle it. You guys are killing me. You're spying on me. You've got all of this dirt on me. Clearly you don't want me in charge. Clearly I'm not the guy that you think I was supposed to be. And so he quit. And the guy that they're going to... Oh, I forgot I have a picture here of Khrushchev. So this again is Gorbachev, the president. And here's Khrushchev. And in a certain way, I think this guy looks like he might be Vladimir Putin's fake father. What was the dirt? Basically, they had entire conversations of Gorbachev saying stuff like, Russia's in such bad economic shape, I don't know if we can fix it. Which was honest. But the problem with honesty in Russia was that if it was honest but against the sort of narrative that the government was pushing, it was bad. And Gorbachev understood. He like I said, he was a trained economist. He knew how bad Russia was. And he was trying to find a way to balance basically losing the Cold War and allowing Russia to still survive as it was. And he was on tape and recorded and on transcript talking about a lot of these ideas, like, hypothetically speaking, what if we went to the United States with this particular plan? Do you think that Reagan would accept this plan as a limited term of not surrender, but negotiation? What about if we agreed to more rounds of nuclear limitation talks? And a lot of this stuff was just, legitimate stuff that leadership should do. Leaders should have these conversations where they play out all of the different scenarios. But with the KGB's muscle and Khrushchev putting all of this stuff in a narrative that fit his goal, he could make Gorbachev look like a traitor. Saying stuff like, I don't know if we'll be able to get out of this. I don't know if this is a good idea. I don't know if we can handle this stuff. He's Russian. In the late 80s, he was unhappy and uncomfortable. Yeah, that's accurate. So Khrushchev ends up failing to sort of eliminate Gorbachev, but he ends up winning because Gorbachev quits. But then he ends up losing because the guy that ends up taking over Russia is this guy, Boris Yeltsin. And Yeltsin is going to be a pivotal figure in the history of both Russia and of the KGB. Boris Yeltsin. Because he went down with a ship. He sort of went down with a ship. But he also did something that's pretty fateful. He realized that the KGB was too strong. Even with the sort of limited directorate stuff that Khrushchev had set up, the sort of boxes or directorate elements where things were sort of compartmentalized. Even with that, it was just too strong. If they could effectively spy on the leader of Russia and organize a coup to take this guy out, Yeltsin was not unhappy, but made others uncomfortable. Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. Yeltsin realizes that if the KGB could do that, they were too strong to exist. And what he's going to end up doing is saying the KGB is no more. And in 1991, he dissolves the KGB. And what is brought into their place is multiple smaller entities. You get the FSB, which is the biggest one that focuses basically on internal stuff. So the FSB today is similar to the FBI in the United States. You have the SVR, which is similar to the CIA. But you still have that good old-fashioned GRU hanging around. Oh yeah, he totally did. He totally got rid of the KGB. And got rid of a lot of their leadership and shuffled a bunch of those guys off into retirement and really cut down on their ability to operate, especially inside Russia, as powerfully as they had been. Because he did not want to be the next Gorbachev, and he didn't want to, end up dead. So now Russia has a bunch of different groups, but here's the thing that's important. With the KGB out of the way, this is actually going to make the GRU much more powerful. And today, in modern day, the GRU is probably one of the most powerful intelligence groups in the world. They're still run by the Russian military. They're still considered military intelligence, but these are the guys that are running a lot of the propaganda in foreign countries. The Russian meddling in the 2016 election, that stuff that happened on Facebook and Twitter with social media and on Reddit and all that stuff, came from people inside the GRU. A lot of the leaks that happened have ties to people that have ties to the GRU. It's not the it's not the FSB or the SVR that's doing most of this stuff now. Most of it is being run by the GRU. Facebook. FSB is Facebook. Facebook. It's the Russian Facebook. I can't help but think of Despicable Me Gru as being a spy now. Well, I mean, that is what it is. So that is the history of the KGB. Killed a Preacher, I hope that tickled or scratched the itch for you, tickled your fancy, whatever you want to call it. I hope that it has been absolutely worth the points that you spent. So I am officially wrapped up right now, but I'd be happy to answer questions. If anybody has any specific ones, if anybody wants to drop some channel points or make some goofy comments, I would be happy. Best of drunk Boris Yeltsin. Oh, good gracious. I'm going to have to open that tab and save it for later, because I feel like if I run YouTube right now, my entire stream is going to crash. Oh, it's actually just called Best of Drunk Boris Yeltsin. Thank you, Joey. That's probably going to make my afternoon. Summon the opinion hat. The opinion hat has been summoned. Dun, 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 dun. The opinion hat has been summoned. Oh, okay. Poisoning and why? Fit, I'm not 100% certain. Oh yeah, she told me she was going to do that, so I will address that in just a moment. Your opinion on the Novichok stuff? Oh, do you mean Navalny? The Russian guy that got poisoned? Okay, I'd be more than happy to give my opinion on that. Okay, so there's a guy named Alexei Navalny who is a Russian politician that has run for office several times. He is a very outspoken critic of the current government. He is a very vocal critic of Putin. And it should be noted here, I can actually tie this back into the lesson. Putin was a lieutenant colonel in the KGB before it got dissolved. And he was under a lot of those people that were being really horrible, like Andropov. He was one of the guys that didn't really like Gorbachev. Now, he swears up and down that he did not support the coup against Gorbachev, but I think we all know that he would prefer more power to less power, right? So, Putin as a leader is all about playing the long game. He's all about playing the game of making you look one way and then doing something else in the other direction. For all of his evil, Putin is a tactical genius. And he recognizes that the leadership of Russia right now is not as unimpeachable as it seems. Everybody in the world likes to think that Putin sort of has this iron-fisted clutch on Russia and that he will never be able to be shaken. But Putin remembers stuff that went down back in the day. He remembers stuff like Gorbachev being pushed out. He remembers stuff like Yeltsin breaking the KGB apart and ruining his dreams. Putin doesn't like the idea of anybody challenging him. He doesn't like the idea of people being able to do so vocally, and he doesn't like the power of the media and social media inside of Russia. Chess is the national sport of Russia. I think so, but I can't confirm that, Joey, but that does sound right. So what Navalny was doing was hitting Putin where it hurts, because Putin loves to present himself as this sort of guy's guy, this fellow's fellow, the chum of the Russian worker. But in reality, the vast majority of people in Russia are undergoing severe economic stress and have been since 2008. Russia has not really completely bounced back from that economic collapse. Their industrial sector has grown, and, of course, it's being hurt by COVID right now, but the stability that Putin had is not always there. Now, he's going to basically be able to rule for the rest of his life, but people like Navalny, who point out the blaring inconsistencies within Putin's image, really get under his skin. And this is the same sort of stuff that happened a few years ago with the old Russian spy that got poisoned in Britain. These are people that were successful in pointing out the flaws that Putin's government says don't exist. Putin likes to present this rose-colored window version of Russia, but people like Alexei Navalny, who have consistently run, has evidence of stuff like voting tampering, has evidence of stuff like illegal operations under the Russian government. Because Russia has a constitution, it has written laws, but Putin doesn't follow them all the way, and neither does his goon squad. So Navalny can point this stuff out and go, look at this, what about this? And he'll get up in Putin's face because he's brave enough to do that. So that's why he got poisoned with a nerve agent. Now, what's specifically interesting about the particular nerve agent that was used to try to get rid of him is that it was developed in Russia during the Cold War, and they're the only ones that basically have any of it left because they didn't distribute it very widely, and they were supposed to destroy most of it to the places that they had did. Now, did Russia destroy all of that stuff? Clearly not. But who else is going to have this kind of stuff? This isn't stuff that you could just go to Poisons R Us and buy a vial of, right? Bandy, which is the actual national game. I don't even know what Bandy is. That is crazy. In light of the nerve agent, how do we feel about Russian vaccine for COVID? Well, some of it actually got out. And based on some European trials, of the vaccine, it does show some minor response from immune systems. They don't actually know how well it's going to work because Russia basically skipped phase 3 trials where you sort of have a control group that's very large, but you keep up with it. They basically says Russian population is phase 3 trial now. Go. Russian hockey. Russia do what they're supposed to do? What? Yeah, really. So my opinion on the Navalny poisoning is that it did not surprise me. I immediately suspected the Russian government to be behind it. And I personally, my opinion, because again, I am wearing the opinion hat, I don't believe for a second that the Russian government was completely innocent in this. But I am wearing the opinion hat, so remember that. Blame Moose and Squirrel. It's always Moose and Squirrel. Hey Moose, how's it going, man? Welcome. So that has been your opinion hat. I hope that fulfilled your happiness of the opinion hat. And I see that my wife has redeemed a channel request for a viewer request stream on... He doesn't want to die, folks. I don't want to die. My wife has requested a viewer request stream on Mississippi mound building cultures, which is actually something that's a bit of a personal hobby of mine. I'm very excited about that. We will be doing that one pretty soon. Remember that there are below your chat windows lots of things to use those adventure points on. If you desire, you can use them on a whole host of things that can make me be silly and do funny voices or tell my opinion or show whatever or do things or stuff. I do have a question, and I want to gauge the room here. I know that in the past people have mentioned that they want me to do some version of a Lord of the Rings history stream where I basically talk through the fictional history of J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth. And I am not opposed at doing so, but it's also not technically history. So there is such a thing on Twitch where I can create a bit of a community pool of channel points that everyone could donate to. The question I would like to pose to you all is, who is actually seriously interested in seeing me do some sort of Lord of the Rings based stream? I am a walking Silmarillion. Oh yes, give me all the loader. I read the Silmarillion every other year. I read the Lord of the Rings every summer. I read The Hobbit every other year. I've read Children of Hurin now 7 or 8 times. I really, really like Tolkien. Other people, I'd be up for that. It has been quite a while since you've read the books, but haven't read them in a couple... Okay, you'd be down. Okay, so what I might do, because again, this isn't necessarily history. I would totally love to just geek out about Lord of the Rings, but that it doesn't technically fit my niche here. He's one of the blindingly white Silmarils. I do not have the light from the tree of Telperion inside of me. I'm sorry. So what I'm going to consider doing, and I might have on Thursday, is a community pool where people can, if they so desire, donate channel points to a community goal of me doing some sort of Lord of the Rings stream. So there's that. I do also want to show off some art, and I know that Daria is probably not with us, and Kyle probably aren't with us right now. Daria's working on a solo show, but I do actually have a piece of Daria's art. For those of you that don't know Daria Axenova Art, very good friend of the channel. Go find her and follow her on Twitch if you aren't already. She has a pet opossum, and several months ago, she was a participant in a gallery show where she drew on coasters. And I was actually able to obtain one of the coasters, and it is titled The Trash King, and it is her possum burrito surrounded by trash, wearing a little Burger King hat that says Trash King on it. And because I feel like I need to support my friends, and also because it's really cool, I own the Trash King. And I think it's super cool. So you should go follow Daria. She's got a website. I believe it's just dariaaxanova.com. It might be dariaaxanovaart.com. Go check her out. Go do some stuff. Go find her. Go show her some love. If you're not following her, make sure you're following her. Do whatever you need to do. I also, just today, got in another piece of artwork that is from good friend of the show and friend David Peterson, which is part of his online con, which he did a couple of weeks ago. David Peterson, she broke the rules and used glue. She did! She did break the rules and use glue. But it is a nice little piece. But I also received this from David Peterson, which is of one of my favorite characters of the Hellboy universe, Abe Sapien. Super awesome piece of art here. Check out all of the fine detail. Abe, very contemplative, underwater. David, shut up. It's awesome. Everybody else is going to say that it's awesome. Nobody knows what you're talking about. So this is going to go on my wall. Absolutely lovely piece from David. And the great thing about it is that right now on David's website, which is Mouse Guard Big Cartel, you can go buy commissions because he actually has an open commissions list, which is not something that is normal. So go to his store and buy his artwork. Gotta love some David Peterson art. I've got lots of it on my walls, and I'm looking forward to putting more of it up there. So I like doing show and tell. I have great friends that have amazing talents. What a cross sell. I don't mind using my channel to help other people out. That's what we're all here for, right? So go and do. All right. Anybody else have anything? Anybody want to redeem some points or ask some questions or anything of that nature? I'm going to take this opportunity while I wait for those to roll in to see if there's anybody out there that we might want to raid. You got in late. Please start with the KGB lecture from the beginning. Moose, here's the great thing about it, my friend. At the end of the show, there will be this nice VOD that pops up. And you can watch the whole thing from the beginning at your leisure. So please do take up that VOD if you would like. Moose, by the way, is a great guy. If you don't know who he is. He hangs around in a lot of the art channels here on Twitch, has done a lot of work helping out artists get some popularity going on. Helps them with social media stuff. And is also about to start a podcast with another guy that pops up in the channel sometimes, Joby Dorr. So keep an eyeball out for that. Moose, when is the podcast actually starting? And feel free, if you have links, Moose, to throw links to podcast-related material in the chat. Please do. Let me see who we got going on. Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis? How do I do Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis? Sunday, 2 p.m. PST. First week's guests are Pink Epoxy and Kirk Shannon. Both great artists. You should go check them out. Give me just a second here. I'm going to have to think about which one I need to do. Yeah, the pretty lady one there is. But I think the what is it? I'm trying to remember because you know, like you have the you're the talk of the town, and then he cuts in with I don't know what you're talking about. It just happened last Sunday, or something of that nature. I can't remember most of those off the top of my head. That's the problem. Like I don't know those well enough to really give you a full version. Okay, so I guess that was close enough. That's the only part that I can really remember. Is like I think that was on like some sort of call-in show, and there was the singing bit, and then he had this funny little hat on. So anyway, there's that. I hope that was worth 200 points. Okay, we've got lots of opportunities to raid here. Let's see. We've got Cat Videos, who's up. We've got Neo Realms, who's up. We've got Cave Geek Art. Art of Lee is up, but he's playing a video game. He's playing Horizon Zero Dawn. Let's see what everybody is doing, and that might help me determine who we might want to raid. I'm glad you don't have Do an Impression Redemption on my channel. Oh, come on, man, it's fun. You get a little bit of humiliation keeps you humble. It only happened last Sunday. All right. So Cat Videos is drawing a picture of that guy whose name I can't ever remember, but he played Hannibal Lecter on the TV show Hannibal Lecter because of retaliation. There may be a picture floating on the internet of me wearing a unicorn wig as part of an Extra Lives charity event. Oh, well, there we go. Mads Mikkelsen, yes. There's a picture of what Cat Videos is drawing. Mads Mikkelsen. Lee is playing Horizon Zero Dawn. Cave Geek is working on an actual leather map right now. And Neo Realms is drawing some sort of contraption being pulled by what looks to be cartoon woolly mammoths. So, any votes from anybody? We've got one for going to see Mads Mikkelsen. Cat Videos. Okay, let's go. We actually haven't raid Cat Videos in some time now, so I think that's a good plan. We will go raid Cat Videos. So I'm going to hit the button here to start the raid. Thank you everybody for coming by. I really appreciate all of the back and forth and the support here tonight. Remember to hit the follow if you are not already. I will be back Thursday night. We will be back on Adventures in History, and we're talking about something that I'm very excited about. We're going to be talking about the Persian religion of Zoroastrianism, one of my favorite topics in the ancient world, something that I don't think a lot of people know about, that I think is wicked cool. So we will be talking about Zoroastrianism, 7 o'clock. When we hit the raid, remember that our battle cry is adventure, and we can throw all of the adventure hats that you can possibly manage to throw. I will see everybody on Thursday, 7 p.m. Thank you very much, and I'll see you then.